So welcome everybody to the December 2024 housing market update. Excited to be back with the housing market update. It's been a while, but we're figuring it out. And you are actually going to get a live feed right into our sales meeting that we're doing. So some of our great agents here at Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate Green Team are live watching this and are going to ask questions and comment. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to screen share here in just a second. Okay, so one thing that I want to point out to everybody is the opportunity, whether you're with Green Team, you're a consumer, whatever, just an interested party, you have a lot of access to information through our website. If you go to the About Us tab on our page and you click on the Green Team Training and Events, you'll get to this Google Calendar, which is you can go back or forward in time and you can check out the monthly real estate sales meeting event. And in that has all of the key links that I'm going to go through of all the data today to present to you. All right. Now, before I go into that, I just want to point out that this market has really been a tale of two stories for the last year and a half, 2 years, maybe even let's push it out 3 years. There's been the consumer story, and then there's been the service professional story of those who service this industry. And a lot of people in the general public don't realize the deep recession that the service provider industry has been in now for the last couple of years. And that's predicated upon the number of transactions I'm going to show you. Let's just talk about the consumer experience over the last few years. It really comes down to two things: inventory and affordability. That's what's made it so difficult for many consumers out there, sellers and buyers alike. Yes, it's been a very robust sellers market now for some time, but a lot of sellers are also buyers. Very few people are just selling. So the reason why one of the big reasons why inventory is so low is because a lot of sellers don't know where they're going to go. They don't have any place to go to. And we're going to check in with Anthony Forte of Quintessential Mortgage in just a minute as well to talk about the mortgage side of things. But a big part of the story for the consumer experience over the last few years has been this delta, this variance in mortgage rates just shooting up. And we'll take a look at that delta and how fast that happened in just a little bit. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to jump into some local regional stats, and we're just going to kind of focus on Sussex County, New Jersey this month, because whether we're looking at national stats or Orange County, New York, or more regional, it's all kind of the same story, right? So what we're looking at here is units sold in a chart, right? In a histograms, if you will. You can see that the line of 2024 is way down, right? So to me, I've always said this is the number of transactions taking place is the mother's milk of the whole thing, right? If you think of a home transaction, there's statistics on this, how much economic impact one particular home sale has on a local economy. It's immense, right? There's huge amount of economic activity that a home sale creates. And the fact that less and less units sold has been taking place over the last 5-6 years here, it's reduced a lot of other economic activity and impacted people in all sorts of industries. But you can see that there was precipitous decline, right? When you take a look at, where we were in 18, 19, 20 was a magical year in terms of the number of transactions. But you know what was going on in 2020 when the pandemic first hit? There was a ton of leftover inventory that didn't sell from the last decline, the last deep real estate recession that took place. There were still homes on the market that were off and on for 10 years, right? And that 2020 year cleared all that out. That's why you saw all those transactions taking place. But then, you take a look at 22 and it dropped right down, right? So there was this massive, uptick in 2020. And then right after that happened, units sold started coming down. But what did that do? It increased a ton of pressure on price, right? Because there is a traditional supply and demand effect going on in our marketplace right now. There is just not enough supply to meet the demand. So what happens in that case? That's economics 101, right? Price goes up. That's what happens. When price goes up, what does that mean? Well, it's harder to get it. Affordability goes down, so on and so forth. The other thing, so we've taken a look at this. I want to show you average price, what's taken place here. All right, because you can see average price just is sailing, right? I mean, it literally looks like, it's liftoff, right? And you can see where we were in 2018. I'm going to show you, there's some fascinating information that we have from Better Homes and Gardens this month. They just released a quarterly report. We're going to get there in a minute. It is remarkable, the delta that occurred from 2018-19 to where we are today. We've never really historically, since we've been tracking stats, we've never seen such an increase in price in such a short amount of time. And this chart shows you, I mean, you can see the delta here, right, between the red line and the green line. I mean, it's a massive increase. It's double, really. It's almost double, 100% increase in basically a 6-year time period. So it's just a massive movement upwards. And look, until inventory levels resume, it just doesn't look like there's much relief to price. I'm going to show you some other evidence today too that kind of signals that, don't think that, this pricing situation is a bubble that's going to burst, because it's really not, because the underpinnings are really true good economic fundamentals like supply and demand, population increases, those sorts of things are the underpinning of what's going on here. So I made this available from Google Drive to anybody that wants to view it. And I just want to point out a few things. This is a 54-page document, okay? So for those of you who are really analytical and super interested in everything, you can read the whole thing. I'm going to point out some highlights because I know most of my audience here is not that analytical and really interested in too many details. So I'm going to hit the high points. This is interesting. First-time home buyers are not near the traditional 40% level. So over the course of time, first-time home buyer transactions usually represent 40% of all transactions taking place. There's about a 13% delta there, right? So we're 13% lower on the number of first-time buyer transactions than we normally are, okay? So what does that mean? Well, investors are up, which is not always the best thing, right? I mean, we are a country of the American dream, which is owning your own home. Home ownership is kind of the underpinning of our economy. So we want to see people owning their own home. That's a good thing for everybody. But the affordability factor is real. I think a lot of first-time home buyers are just priced out of the market. They can't get there between mortgage interest rates and the price of the home. When you boil it all down to what the monthly payment's going to be, they just can't afford it. So that's something interesting to look at. I wanted to go down a little bit further here and point out a couple other things. Fannie is predicting, and we're going to touch base with Anthony a little bit from Quintessential Mortgage, that mortgage rates will drop to 5.7 in 2025. I've been saying now for a while that if rates can settle in right around the 6% mark or lower, we're going to be in good shape long term. I think that's historically a very good rate, right around the 6% mark. Yes, it's going to take time for things to kind of balance and even out, but I think that's good news. So, and a lot of others, if you go through here, like here's the MBA, Mortgage Bankers Association, Fannie Mae, Wells Fargo. Everybody's predicting 6% or lower for next year in 2025 for rates to hit that. So that's a good sign that the professionals in the industry, that's what they're predicting. NAR is predicting existing home sales will rise by 9% in 2025, with new home sales to finish up 11%. So that's a good prediction for us as well. It believes there will be another 13% increase in 2026, with new homes up another 8%. So it's like I said before we started this recording for the housing market update, I said to all of our realtors, hang in there. You've hung in this long. You've endured a very difficult 2 years. And this year, especially with regulation changes and antitrust lawsuits hitting the industry and all these different things, this has been an extremely difficult environment to operate as a service professional. But if you've made it this far, you got to keep going. You can't give up now, because better days are ahead. 2025 is going to be a better year. We've kind of hit the bottom, if you will, right? We've seen the trough. So this is also so interesting. This is what I was talking about before, right? So here are the annualized home sales. And just take a look at this, right? Back in June of 1982, the annualized amount was 1.89. That's how many homes sold during 1982. Go forward to another huge year, right? The biggest on record was July of 2005. That's actually the year that I got into the business full time. I was wooed by all the transactions that were happening. I gave up a really good job to jump in. Little did I know that 5 years later, the number of transactions would be half of what they were in 2005. It was a 50% decrease. Those were very difficult years, 2010, but look at where we are now, 3.95. It's not that far off the deepest of the real estate recession. And I come back and I say the only reason why the media and everybody's not talking about the deep recession that we're in is because it seems from the public eye that everything's good in our industry because prices are so high and there's no inventory and things are flying off the shelf. It seems like a really great marketplace for the professionals that are involved, but the ones that are actually in it know that this is a very tough and tricky environment. And this really tells the whole story because at the end of the day, it's all about transactions, right? For everybody that's a service provider, if transactions aren't happening, not much else is, all right? But here is the price. This was what I was referring to before. When you take a look at, U.S. median price for different time periods, 1998, it was 150. We're now at 400, right? But just look back in July of 2019, it was only 280, right? And it jumped all the way up to where we are now, 407, in less than a 5-year time period. So that's great news for those that own this asset class. That's great news. But for those that are trying to break through and get into it, it's tough news. So the affordability factor is real. It's difficult. And, we've just got to do our best to try to help as many people achieve that goal of home ownership as possible, because that is a noble mission. All of you guys working in this industry doing it are doing a great thing. And you're really helping people, you're helping their families, and you're helping the overall economy by making it happen. And listen, I was talking yesterday to a recruit. We're talking to a lot of recruits all the time. And one in particular, she's very disenchanted with the way things are. And she was, just like really feeling bad for her clients because it's like they can't offer much over asking price almost ever. They can only do an FHA loan. And I just told her, I said, look, I understand it's frustrating. I understand it's exhausting, but you need to know the good work that you're doing. And I say it to all of you guys. You are making a huge impact in people's lives. And don't ever forget that. It's not just about your commission check. It's about the good that you're doing for yourself, within your own family by generating revenue for yourself, but also for those families that you're selling homes to, so that they can build wealth and they can sustain and enjoy good wealth over the course of time. Don't forget that you're doing. Just again, so that we can see the one point that I like to make to everybody, and this is kind of me just selling all of my comrades in this business to hang in, right? You got to understand perspective. And the reason why this is going to play out is this was a huge jump, right? I mean, rates were, look at this, 2.8%, 3%, for, a solid year or so, right? Like there was a ton of refis and all this stuff going on around the 3% mark. And then, within like less than a year, it jumped to 7. So it's just going to take time, enough time for things to settle down and settle in, because most reasons why people make moves is because life forces them to make moves. I've recently heard this one, and I got to get this down pat, but it's like the 5 or the 7 Ds of life, right? Diamonds, marriage, divorce, diapers, kids being brought into the world by parents, right? Like all these different things that force people to make a move. It just will take time for enough of those life situations to occur for this delta in interest rates to not matter so much anymore, right? And my point is, and Anthony, this is where I want to bring you in and introduce you and say hello, is that if we can kind of land and look at this chart, right? If we can kind of land around the 6% mark, look at this historically. I mean, that's a pretty good rate historically, right? This line that you see right here, I can't, the one that I'm following horizontally is 7.5%. So the 6 is about halfway between, you can look at my cursor where it's going. Over here, right? Just follow that line across. Most of the time, the rates have been above that mark, right? And that's kind of my point. If rates are really going to settle in below the 6% mark next year, that's a great thing for everybody in this marketplace. So, Anthony, let's bring you in. Welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you to everyone. And I can still say good morning. We got 3 minutes left. We have a lot of people that are, I call them landlocked in their home, right, or rate locked in their home. And
Hmm.
they bought a home and they have a 2.9 interest rate, but some things are happening, some things are changing. And, the thought or the sentiment going into 25 is that, a 5.5 or a 5.75 interest rate may be enough to get them out and get them going. And even though their family's expanding, and maybe this is enough to kind of spark the market. 25 and 26 are going to be banner years again. He thinks those are huge rebound years. He thinks the rates are going to come down, and people are going to come out of kind of where they've been hiding out for the last 2 years and you start to see a lot more first-time home buyer stuff. You'll start to see a lot more inventory clear itself up on the market.